Hello and welcome. I'm John, and this is a special Arty class webinar hosted by Shopkeep Arty, the online platform helping everyone to be inspired, learn new skills and have fun creating. Today we are zooming to England to visit ink and tea artist Carne Griffiths. So without further ado, let me press our grandly named travelometer to the left of me and we'll fly there now. Now, Carne is a graduate of art and design and has produced intricate designs that have appeared in the films Valkyrie, The Last King of Scotland and The Phantom of the Opera. His elaborate floral designs for Asprey were included in their first ever catwalk collection, and his work was featured on the embroidered cover of the 80th Royal Variety Performance. So he's done loads of different things. He's displayed at the Royal Academy, at the London Art Fair, and has done solo exhibitions in Hong Kong and Milan. Hello, Carne.
Hi John, how you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Last time I saw you was when we hosted our workshop in January. It's been quite a while. How have you been?
Yeah, been good, thanks. Yeah, still enjoying lockdown here, but hopefully whilst we're nearly out and we can go and see people and do wonderful things again.
Exactly. Well, while I let you get ready for this special Arty class, I'll just finish my short introduction. So unlike our free 45-minute Arty class webinars, which get oversubscribed, these special Arty webinars guarantee you a place and are more exclusive since we don't live stream. Some of you will have paid to join in live today, but most of you joining us will be our Shopkeep Arty patrons who get access to these special classes throughout the whole month for free. And ironically, membership of being a patron starts at the same price per month as it costs to attend just one of these classes. So it really is a no-brainer. There's no hidden fees and you can cancel at any time. If you do want to find out a little bit more, simply head over to shopkeeparty.com where you can find out all about what you get for being a patron, and it also supports us in running our free Arty classes throughout the week as well. These 1 hour webinars are designed to give you a short, sharp boost of creative inspiration from leading artists around the world. An amazing opportunity to join them live and experience different multicultural influences. We host it live because it's the best way to learn, as you can ask questions directly to the artist. It's ideal if you paint along at the same time, as you'll then think of the right questions to ask. But if you can't, or if you're watching on YouTube, maybe sign up for one of our next live ones via our website. Whether it's one of our upcoming live events or a video of a live session from our library, you can find all the reference pictures, materials lists and all the information you really need via our website. So it really is very easy. Around halfway, we'll pause and I'll ask Carne about his 2 to 3 hour workshop webinar event, a more exclusive event that's coming up very soon. Now today's class is all about reflections and refractions, so I hope you've got your pot of tea. There was a few messages before, some people got their tea ready, so I'm really glad. So you're probably ready to go, so let's get back to Carne and we'll make a start. So Carne,
Thanks, John.
you've got your kettle, well done.
Ready.
Now someone asked a moment ago, does it need to be cold? But I seem to remember that
The
hot is
opposite.
good.
Yeah, hot is good. The opposite. Freshly brewed tea is nice and clear and colourful. Cold tea tends to be a bit murky and gloomy, so it's best freshly brewed is the best, and nice and subtle with its colour as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Tetley tea at one point
My
on the
favourite.
reference picture. Is that? But they can use any different teas. It doesn't. They can experiment.
Yeah, Tetley chosen for me purely on its colour, so for Pantone reasons, not taste reasons.
Yeah, and this is obviously what we're going to be focused on in the workshops. We could talk about that maybe halfway. But today, were you going to show a little bit about some of the reflections or refractions there? Is that what
Yeah,
you've
so
got it?
I thought what I do is just focus in on because next week's workshop we're going to be looking at creating something almost the same as this piece.
Which looks amazing.
Slightly different reference. Okay, so involves the use of teas and calligraphy inks and graphite mainly, with a little bit of gold ink and a little bit of gold foil. What I wanted to do is just kind of focus on these sort of glass areas here, and the glass shard motif is something that I use quite regularly in my work. Strangely, it developed from some thorns on a branch that had kind of broken off in a painting. And those thorns became little shards of glass, and they slowly evolved to bigger pieces of glass within the work. And now they're kind of like a little emblem in the pieces that I do. But what I really love about the glass shards is the fun that you can have with very subtle watercolor techniques, and just a couple of little tips and tricks that give you this feeling of something that's translucent, that also slightly shifts its background. So what I'm going to do today in this short workshop is just create a little ink splash piece. We'll put a bit of tea in there as well, but we're mainly looking at creating these sort of almost like negative shapes within the work, and how I go about doing that using fountain pen ink and graphite.
Yeah, they look really, really stunning. Karen's asked, how about fruit teas?
Fruit teas are great. Yeah. Also, I mean, I have a big selection of teas. I have my go-to teas, which I know the kind of the results of. But generally speaking, anything I use in the studio, I'm always changing my materials up. I'm always trying new materials. I've got some new inks on the go today. I'm using some diamine inks, which I haven't used before.
Right.
I just played around with earlier on this little prep piece. And I thought that this prep piece actually would be a good direction for doing a 1 hour workshop, because it allows us to be quite free with the inks and the paints, and then to experiment with how we get this kind of glass effect layered over something in the background. I'll use floral elements today, but the principle's the same no matter what you're kind of painting, really.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Great. So how should people start?
Right, okay, so we'll talk through now. So from a blank sheet of paper, what we're going to do today is we're going to start by letting the sort of ink drips and splashes guide our work. So I'm going to create something similar to this circle motif. It doesn't have to be a circle, it can just be a splodge on the page. Just using plain water. I've just got a jar of water here and a brush. It's going to be hard to see this, but I'm just literally going to flick and make a circular clear water pattern. Now I'm not actually touching the brush on the page at all. I'm just going around and I'm allowing the brush to flick off in these little directions. So we get this kind of like almost this nice sort of radial shape with lots of splashes coming off, and then it contains all the energy and everything. Not too much water on there. We're going to dab some of that off in a bit anyway, but this is just going to give us our background to start with, that we can then add some ink details to. Okay. So I'll pause for a little second here while people are able to do that. If I zoom down, you can probably just see a little bit how that's kind of reflecting. And then we're going to take a finer brush. I'm just going to use slightly finer watercolor brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of the calligraphy ink. So for this one, I'm going to use pale blue. This is a Herbin ink, and these are writing inks, not drawing inks. The difference being with the writing inks is that when we come to lift color later, the watercolor technique whereby we add water and then remove color from the paper by dabbing it with something absorbent like a tissue or sometimes a sponge, we're then able to remove the color, and that's the kind of key to getting these sort of glass shard pieces. But first of all, I'm just going to dab on the outside, just almost following the outside, and try and catch some of these little marks that are around as well, and just allow some of this color to flow around. Now, I always allow things to dry when I'm working in the studio, but we have to speed things up today. So what I'm going to do, I'm just closing this circle with.
Now, I've had a couple of people ask, can they use acrylic inks, or what would the effect of that be?
Acrylic inks won't work, John, for the simple reason that acrylic inks, once they're dry, they're permanent. So you need a non-permanent ink, and fountain pen writing inks tend to be non-permanent.
Okay.
With acrylic inks, what you're best doing is removing the sort of glass shard areas while the ink is still wet. That's the only way you'll be able to lift the color. And what I like to do is I like to dry the piece and then add water over the top so that I can get that very definite shape of the glass on the dry paper rather than on the wet paper. Whereas if you're lifting from the wet paper, you end up with a kind of a fuzzier edge. I'm just going to use some of this. This is the slightly darker diamine blue ink. Might have a bit too much on here. I think I'm just going to dab some of this off as well so that we can get it dry quicker. I'm just flicking some of this into the paper. I'm going to dab some of that off and just get it a little bit drier so that we've got a starting point. What I tend to do as well is look for the bits where the water is sitting heaviest, and then just use like a little corner or point of your kitchen towel just to drink up some of that water. And what that does is it kind of draws your ink around the page as well. So we're removing excess liquid from the surface, but we're also creating these little eddies of colour throughout the piece. So if we do that and just get it so it's nearly dry, then we can just hair dry this area off and begin to add some details with pen as well.
How long would it normally take to dry if you were just doing it naturally?
Well, a couple of hours to be dry enough.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because we're working over it with fountain pen, it needs to be super dry, because if it's not really dry at that point, then you're going to get sort of those lines are going to bloom. They're going to spread out slightly, and what we really want is to get this sort of crisp effect before we move on to doing the sort of the glass shard areas. Right, I'm just going to drink up some of these heavier bits, and then I'm going to add a little bit while the paper's still damp. I'm going to add a few more little specks of ink to it as well, so that we just get a bit more of those patterns. But we've got some nice patterns in that colour there. A lot of this will disappear or merge together when we use the hairdryer, unfortunately. But preserving these patterns is best if you can allow things to dry naturally. So maybe I should have used a bit less of the water, but the advantage of using more water at the beginning is that you get this directional splash mark, and you can't really control exactly where the brush strokes are going. You're not in contact with the paper, so that you're really sort of throwing the ink around, and you're getting that kind of energy into the piece as well. Right, I'm just going to dip directly back into the ink again, and just on some of the drier areas, just pop a little bit, maybe a bit too dry there, a little bit of this in, so that it will just run. There we go, that's nice. So that will just run into those areas, and then we can start to hair dry and get this nice and dry to work over the top of. These diamine inks are quite interesting, actually, because when you use them quite thickly or undiluted, they dry with kind of like an oily, almost metallic texture. They're quite fun. I'm not sure what is in the pigment, but it's
Sandra asked, what brand of ink are you using?
I am using Herbin,
that was right.
Diamine, and Waterman. So I normally buy lots of different inks to kind of see their effects, but mainly writing inks, mainly from fountain pen websites or calligraphy websites. Well, sometimes calligraphy inks are permanent as well. It's more general handwriting inks, but you'll find lovely sort of colour sets from people like Diamond and so does Herbin as well. They have a really broad sort of colour set. Right, so I'm going to use the noisy hairdryer, John, and dry this off.
Okay.
Right. The first thing I've done now is moved it. I don't really want to move it with a hairdryer. You can carefully half cover the back of the hairdryer, which will slow down the flow. Put the hairdryer on hot, and then you get less movement of your inks around them while you're drying.
Oh, that's a good technique, covering the back of the hairdryer up.
Completely, you'll set fire to your house.
Yes, you don't want to set fire to your house.
Insurance plan. But yeah, it just stops the flow being so strong and stops it blowing the inks around everywhere. And then you're mainly using the heat. So you're almost using it like a heat gun at this point, which would probably be quite a good alternative. Right, I'm just going to dab a few of these areas that are a little bit paint kind of run into. I'm using unstretched paper today as well, which I don't normally do.
So Jennifer, the name of the ink is Herbin. I've got something here. Let me just replace my. There we go. Herbin Inks. Yes, and it is just like fountain pen ink. And Susie, your tip about the heat gun is a good one actually, which I'll mention to Carne.
Yeah, I've never tried a heat gun. I'd only be worried about sort of scorching the paper, but I presume a heat gun comes with settings that you can play with.
You might find that's. I can't remember which artist had a heat gun. Oh, it was Iris in the Philippines, and she had a heat gun that she used, and it was for her watercolor art, and it worked really well. Yeah.
I'll be getting that out of the shed. I have got one, so I might be giving that a go.
Is your Waterman Brown ink called Absolute Brown?
Let me check. The brown?
Yeah. Because Wendy says they don't do a sepia colour.
Yeah, Absolute Brown is their sepia. I think they changed the name of it.
Yeah.
Slightly different recipe to what it used to be, but the Waterman Brown has that lovely pink undercolour. When you mix it with the water, it goes.
Oh, it's the wrong. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Margaret said you need a diffuser for your dryer, something you guys don't use. That's quite sexist, Margaret. I don't know. I might I might use a diffuser on my very few hair strands. Don't you know?
Right, we'll get that nice and dry now. Right, so that's our kind of underpainting. I was going to add a bit of a tea layer to this, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a little demo of one of the glass shards.
Okay.
And I'm going to come back and add some tea to a separate section of it later. I normally use the tea elements more when I'm creating these sort of floral sprigs around. But the tea is a little bit more permanent for lifting. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I think just the inks on its own is going to show us better how things work. And then maybe we can add the tea later to bring in some nice warm sort of ochres and
now Jill said that her ink has sprayed everywhere. Is that a problem?
No problems. Doesn't matter where the ink's gone at this point. For the purpose of this demonstration, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at putting a little geometric shape of glass over here. So as long as you've got an area to kind of cross over between the white paper and that section, then this will work. And what we're going to do before that is we're going to add some detail using the same fountain pen ink that you've just used. So if you've used one color, just return to that. And then let me just bring this in a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm going to work over this darker area here. And what I'm going to do is just take a nice flowing line just to see through there. And then using that line as the kind of center of where my leaves are going to be, I'm just going to follow. I'm not quite dry yet, so I'm getting a little bit of blur on these lines, which is okay for now. If you feel that your ink is too contrasty at this stage, you can dip it in the water a little bit. You can dip a fountain pen nib in the water and it will just make everything a little bit lighter. But we're okay using strong colors at this point, because after this stage is where we're going to add plain water, or maybe even boiling water to do the lifting process. And boiling water just gives us a little bit more lift of color than cold water does. So I'm just following that stem line now and finding shapes left by the sort of splashes of ink and turning this into a nice kind of flowing sprig of leaves.
I notice you're holding your ink pen upside down there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm using the back of the nib, which is slightly finer than using the top, because the lines are splaying out slightly. It's not quite dry enough. So the finer the line I put down, and really just tracing the surface, not pressing down at all. Always try and give a slightly varied line. Fountain pens, one of the nice things about fountain pens over fine line pens is that you've got that control. So I'm going to follow this line up here. Pull out of it.
So Sandra's asked, what kind of pen is that?
So this is, and you can use any fountain pen. So this is a, the name's gone from my head.
It's not Coeco, is it?
Coeco, yeah, thanks, John.
A Coeco. There we go.
But these are Coeco pens, which I like to use. I also use Parker Vector, which is a much cheaper option. A Parker Vector pen will cost you between about £8 and £15, depending on where you get it from, and is available in fine or a medium nib as well. So I'm just following, again, I've taken another line off the side there, and I'm just splaying out some leaves from that area and trying to follow the edge of this, of where these paint splashes. So it's almost like at this stage, you're allowing the paint splashes that you've made to dictate to some extent the shape of your pattern. So it's nice being guided by, by that kind of chance element. Do tell me if I'm racing ahead too much.
Well, it's everybody's shapes will look very different, so it's it's just literally just go for it and
yeah, and it's the concept we're looking at today, not recreating an image. We're just looking at how to kind of do this sort of playfulness with glass, but getting this down earlier. No one's going to like the next stage, because the next stage is where I paint over the whole thing in water and all these lovely lines then disappear completely. But it's part of the layering process, and it's kind of nice because it kind of, if I show you this other example here, you can see it kind of leaves a little trace of where the lines were.
And yes, no, it's lovely.
So it gives that kind of ghosting effect that you get with a piece of glass that might be reflecting light. It also takes the color of what you've painted underneath into the glass further out over the white shape as well. So it does some sort of fun things with the paint. It's a nice little trick.
Jennifer says it's so gorgeous already. I'm watching, but can't wait to have a go.
Oh, good.
So that's great. So Sandra said, so are you dipping your pen into the ink, or are you dragging the paint from the blobs?
No, I'm dipping the pen into the ink, sorry. And because my ink's all the way over here, you can't see that. Let me pull back a little bit so you can see. Because it's a fountain pen nib, it holds quite a lot of ink as well. So
do you not typically use the cartridges? You just
No, because I change between ink colors. So when I move from this blue to this blue, I slowly get the color changing as I'm drawing. So you get this nice kind of line that isn't consistently the same color.
Okay, I've got you.
And the little bit of reservoir in the fountain pen, this little bit here, will hold a tiny bit of ink. But I generally just dip the actual nib, maybe like 2 or 3 millimeters into the ink, just to give enough to draw with. I prefer the nib of a fountain pen to a dip pen. That's why, although I sometimes use a dip pen, I find that they dig into watercolor paper quite a lot if you draw in both directions.
Yeah.
Whereas the fountain pen gives, when you return it to its normal side, you'll see how thick that line is now, but it's got that nice kind of rounded ball end, which allows you to draw freely in all directions. And a dip pen doesn't really allow you to do that. You'll get those little digging sprays of
Margaret's asked what kind of ink pen again. It's a Coeco.
This is a Coeco. Oh, very nice. Yeah, I get excited just seeing that packaging, John. It's lovely.
Well, I was inspired by one of our last workshops, so I did treat myself to a Coeco
They are lovely, aren't
brass pen.
they? Yeah, the brass one especially. It's just,
Yeah, I'll show everyone that because it is quite a nice thing. So it's like a pocket pen, and you unscrew it, and it comes out, and it just fits really nicely. So it's the right length of
yeah,
pen,
it's
but
a
it
nice.
means then you can travel with it and put it in, and it's got a nice weight to it. It's lovely.
It gets a lovely patina as well when you've used it for a while because it's brass. It gets, it's worn and lovely. Ages really nicely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we've kind of got enough to start working on this whole sort of glass concept here. I'm very mindful of the time because I've run out of time.
Okay.
Too much.
I'm going to put on chat how you spell the pen, so don't worry, I'll put
I'm
that
just
on
going to go
there.
and change my plain water for boiling water.
Okay.
And I just advise anyone who's ready to move on to the next stage, if you get yourself some hot water, it will just speed things up a little bit.
Okay. Uh, I've just noticed that my mum is on the attendees, and she said it would make a nice Mother's Day gift. Get lost, mum.
Good.
Now you're getting some flowers.
That's a good idea. Right. Okay. So I have steaming hot boiling water here. So what I'm going to do now is, for the purposes of, you don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it just so you can see. Actually, I think I'll draw two glass shards over this piece now. So what I want to do is, in my head, I imagine that I've got a rectangular piece of glass, but that it's kind of pointing towards me this way. So what I tend to draw is kind of like shapes that are sort of narrower at the center, and then they come out like this. But they're not really triangular pieces of glass. The idea is that you're trying to create the illusion that they're foreshortening towards the center. I'm just going to make this a little bit longer. Normally, I would draw this much lighter because we're going to use some little tricks with a fountain pen just to give this little sort of glass shape some kind of edges, and we're also going to get it moving and kind of refracting the background. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw another smaller glass shard just overlapping so that we can play around with how these glass shapes kind of interact. So I've just put two simple shapes. They can be any shape you want, just nice straight sharp edges. Okay, so what we're going to do next when we've got that is we're going to look at this whole outline as one shape. So this enclosed area here that we've made from those two overlapping glass shapes, we are going to take plain water, no ink, a nice clean brush, and we're going to fill that with water quite heavily.
Any chance we could zoom up a bit more?
Yeah, let's do that.
Louise said, John, where did you send off for the pen in COVID times? I actually ordered it from Coeco themselves in Germany. Is it a dip? But you can get it on Amazon and everything. I'm pretty sure of it. Is it a dip pen or cartridge? It is cartridge, but obviously you can just dip.
Yeah, I think it comes with a draw cartridge as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you can kind of suck things up.
Yeah, so you can put tea in.
Yeah. I'll show you the draw cartridge because it's quite. Just hold off on putting the water on.
Oh yeah, I'm raring to go, John.
So this is the draw cartridge. It's quite nice, and it's like a little syringe, and you suck up the ink like that, and then put it in, and then obviously it uses up the ink as it goes through. So it's quite a nice idea.
Yeah, and what you can do is you can fill your pen with plain water and use it as a dip pen, and what will happen is your color will get lighter and lighter and lighter, but still keep writing. That's also quite a nice technique as well. So if you're working on a piece, you can work at the areas where you need a darker color, and then start working the areas that need to be more subtle and lighter, and all the way down until you're almost just drawing with water. And there are some lovely techniques just drawing with plain water over a color as well, where you use this lifting technique to lift the lines, and that can be really nice too.
Lovely.
Right, okay, so we're going in. Hopefully you can see that nice and clearly, that area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flood this area with water. So I'm following the edge of the glass lines. There's a lot of ink in that there. I might remove some of that spray there. You don't really want that ink to start drying, so you need to keep flooding it, lots and lots of water. I've spilt it
So
over the
Trina's asked, that water you're using, is it boiling or hot water?
hot water, yeah.
Hot, yeah.
And that's why it's eating through so much of the ink here. It's a little bit more than I thought it would be, but it's going to erase practically everything from this section. So maybe not boiling water next time. And I'm using a different paper to the paper I was using. I was using like a Cardi handmade paper earlier, and it didn't do quite so much erasing. But it's going to leave us with a nice little ghost of the image that we had before. Right, okay, let's plonk lots of water in here. Just make sure it doesn't get too much that it runs outside the area that you're working on. And you can, while you're doing this, just drink up some of that excess water as well. Okay.
So Susie's asked an interesting question. Do you have to be careful what water you put in the pen? Because her water there is very hard.
I wouldn't have thought so over that amount of time through the pen. I would have thought quite difficult to build up kind of a line scale on, on a fountain pen. But yeah, if you're worried about it, just use it in the nib rather than a draw cartridge. Yeah. Right, but I'm just going to dab some areas of this because this is going to be that glass surface, and you can already see.
Yeah, the pattern still does show beneath it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it almost looks like an etching at this point. Yeah. And then when I put most of the water off, a hard press on there is giving me.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
A lift of that section. So there you've got, apart from this little bit where I spilt the water over, and we can correct that later, we've got a nice little sort of flat color kind of lift over that. With cold water, I think you may have preserved a bit more of this color. So I suppose the thing to take from this is that the hotter the water is, the more you're going to sort of remove that ink. And maybe on a different section after this, I'll try it with cold water to just see how things come out. Now you can carry on doing the lifting. You can reapply more water and try and lift more color if you want to make, just really sort of work those areas and then lift out again, and you'll find it just get slightly lighter in that section there. So
Jane asked, are the shards drawn in pencil? I think you did do the outline in pencil.
I don't normally. It's just for the purposes of showing you where they were going. It was a bit
okay.
At the edge out. But what you can do, sometimes I just mark points, and sometimes I just paint it straight on. I'll just start painting these geometric.
Okay, just do freehand.
Yeah, because it doesn't really need any planning, because when you ink later on, you kind of then, you kind of create those shards. And sometimes, even just by accident, when I'm painting, and I'll show you on this one here, you'll end up with lovely little sort of geometric areas that you can then turn into glass shards that just kind of happen within the piece. And sometimes I just enclose those and work with those, that just happen by chance rather than sort of by planning. Okay. So I need to do hair drying again, and yeah, we're good for time.
I think these techniques are so fascinating. Now, Louise has said, are the different coloured inks difficult to get hold of? They're not if you go and look for them. If you go to like the Herbin website, for example, they've got so many different inks. And obviously on the Waterman, Waterman is so prevalent on most online retail shops. You can get lots of different Waterman. But the Herman inks that I managed to get, I think I might have got these on Amazon actually, and it was just as a sort of trial pack. So if I just share my screen while Carne's dry, so it was just like a selection of different Herbin inks, so that you can just have a little try and mix between them all. So you might want to give that a go.
And they last forever as well, John. They're so concentrated that a bottle will last me well over a year of kind of use.
Wow.
Right. Okay.
Now I'm conscious. Time was sort of just running away. I was really enjoying myself and forgot that we need to stop at halfway.
Halfway already. It happened quickly.
I know it has. So I know. So How are you finding it? It's really fantastic, isn't it? Although we don't live stream these special shows like our Tuesday classes, we do publish it later on YouTube. So if you are watching the recording and you're enjoying what you're seeing, we'd really appreciate if you could press the thumbs up button, as it helps others discover this class and introduce them to this wonderful art. So thank you. Also, if you subscribe to our channel on YouTube, so you'll see the button here under your YouTube thing. If you press subscribe, then you'll get notified when we launch new classes and arty inspired shows, so you don't miss anything. So it's really worth doing that too. We're also going to randomly pick a subscriber at the beginning of next month to enjoy a live 2 to 3 hour workshop of their choice, worth up to £38. So can't be bad. In addition to these classes, our ultimate tutorial is, as previously mentioned, our full 2 to 3 hour workshop webinars. And these events have restricted numbers, and you can speak directly to the artist for guidance as you paint, and it's just a really great way of picking up a lot more of their tips and tricks. So the price to attend is just £38, or equivalent to about $50 US, which works out at about £12 or $17 an hour. So it's really, really great value. Now we'll be hosting Carne's workshop next week on Thursday the 18th of March, and it's going to be at 3:30 in the afternoon UK time, so it's not bad if you're in the US or whatever. It's in first thing in the morning, really, and I can't wait. So you showed a little picture at the start, didn't you, of what we were going to be doing there, Carne? Have you got that to hand again?
Well, we're going to be doing something approaching either this piece or this piece. Obviously, it's going to be a new piece, and by the seat of my pants, most of the times it will be of this rather than a copy of this piece. But we'll follow quite closely some of the techniques in here so that you can see how to do those. So we'll go further into the sort of the glass shapes and different things that you can do, but we'll also look at some of the motifs, different techniques for using the tea more, some techniques using gold leaf, and maybe some outlining techniques in gold as well.
Will they need to purchase the gold leaf? Is that a prerequisite? Do they need to have some gold leaf?
We'll make it a gold ink or a gold leaf. You can kind of use either. It's just a kind of an additional embellishment that I add at the end. So there won't be too much focus on that. But if people want to, then we can go down we can have a little section of the gold leaf in there as well.
Oh, that'd be great. I'll just share my screen and show you how easy it is to book. You head over to Shop Keep Arty, our website. You click on live events. You scroll down, and you'll see Carne's workshop just there. Click on the workshop button, and it'll then open up his workshop page. On there you can see photos of what he's going to be doing, a reference photo, and the materials list, which is useful as well. If you want to pick anything up, we've got a deal with Jackson's as well. It gives you 10% off, so that's quite good, quite handy, and they ship globally. And then if you're interested in taking part in the workshop, you click that link at the top. It'll go through to Carne's shop, and you've got his live webinar and also his video tutorial there if you can't make the live date, and the video, the full price, but also with a discount if you attended the webinar. Once we've done the video and we've published that online, we need to unlock it for your YouTube account. But once we've done that, if you visit our online video catalogue, you can then scroll down, find the video at any time in the future, press the watch button, and it will play for you. And you can do that on any device, be it your phone, tablet, computer, whatever it is. So it's really, really versatile. So hopefully that helps. Brilliant. Let's get back now for the second half.
Yeah, ready to go.
Perfect.
Okay, so at this stage, because you've got two pieces, the reason I brought two pieces of glass into this demonstration is that we're going to play around with the whole kind of idea of depth with these two pieces. So what I need to decide first is where these two pieces are in relation to each other, and what that will guide at is which of the edges are completely straight and which of the edges are slightly refracted. So what I'm going to do, it makes more sense to me to have the larger piece closer towards me and the smaller piece further away. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give this larger piece a straight edge here, and this is going to run over the top. So immediately that puts that glass piece over the top of the other piece, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to follow that edge. Sometimes with drawing the edges of glass, sometimes it's nice just to leave kind of little gaps as well, because it's almost like the light and the shade kind of picks up along that edge. We'll give it some thickness in a little bit. Now, when we look at the piece underneath, here's the simple little trick. So we're going to be drawing this edge here, but we are going to be shifting the edge that's underneath slightly to the right. So we're going to draw down to this line here, and then we're just going to draw parallel to this line, and then again underneath and to this line here. So there's like a little bit of a shift there, a little bit of refraction, and we're going to do the same thing on this line here, and again just slightly in the same direction to the right, and it just gives that little bit of an effect that there's some kind of distortion from the glass. And when we give these glass shapes a little bit of thickness as well, so I'm going to take a slightly lighter line inside there, and then back over the original line, and then a slightly lighter line there, continuing just past to the end, and then giving this a little bit of thickness here. So what we've got is a white edge at the bottom there. We come just under that line, and then drawing lines vertically down. We've given that little piece underneath a little bit of thickness. And just where it crosses over this line with the glasses in front of it, we've got that little shift to show that refraction there. That's just a simple way just to create the illusion that you've got two transparent objects overlying, and also gives a little key as to which one is closer in front. Now, when we add depth and lines to this piece, what I normally do is just add a little bit of false shadow, almost with hatching lines. The area underneath. What that does is just lifts this piece a little bit higher. And I can go back in here to the area where a little bit too much. Do the same there. There we go, we've just added that. I'm going to, again, using the darker blue, I'm just going to go to the corners of this glass piece, just put little touches in areas where it crosses over, with darkness to that line. And there we go. Now you'll see that underneath, the floral area that we worked on is the same area as the white in the background, and that's because we lifted all of the color away. So what I can do now is either using a paintbrush or using down a watered ink by dipping the fountain pen into the hot water and just using a slightly lighter ink, is reintroduce color to some of these.
So is that straight from the ink pot, or did you say you'd watered it down a bit?
That's watered down, that's slipped into the water. So we're just going to give that a slight bit of color, and we're just using opened hatching lines just to give that illusion that the piece is behind glass and it's just a faded version of what's in front of it. So yeah, if you dip your pen into the water, and then just test on a piece at the side and make sure it's light enough. If it's not, dip it in the water again. What you can do at this stage as well is where you've got that little bit of refraction, just overdraw and take that slightly offline with the glass that was underneath. So you also show a slight bit of movement in the leaves as well. They've almost disappeared. So you kind of draw them not quite aligned.
Now, you know, you said you dip sometimes between inks and you get that sort of color graduation between the
Yeah.
different things. Do you sometimes worry about the contamination, or is it so intense that it would hardly?
Yeah, and I kind of like it sometimes. Like some of the colors for me are sort of too bright. So if I leave a little bit of brown on the ink when I'm using yellow, for example, I like it because it moves towards that ochre. But if I'm not happy with it, I'll put it into a palette, use a pipette, and just put a couple of drips in a palette. There's some colors you don't kind of want to muddy up, but I
Yeah,
kind of like the interplay between the colors a lot of the time, and a lot of the mixing I do is on the page. So yeah, either in a palette if you don't want to contaminate the colors, especially if you've got something like a really bright yellow, because that contaminates easily. If you
yeah,
especially
yeah,
something in it, then either wash your pen out first or just put a little drop of the ink on something you can just drag the nib through.
yeah. And I love when you look at what you've got there on the page, what we can see on the screen, that the I mean, they're not really happy accidents because they're deliberate, but the splashes, but the fact that you've drawn the ink around the color, it almost makes it gives it a three-dimensional quality.
Yeah, just that kind of outlining as well. And it kind of, I don't know, for me, it's kind of like it's saying that that's happened by chance, but then
Yeah.
you're reaffirming it. You're kind of saying, oh, that's a really good thing that's happened by chance. So you're underlining it, a couple of times,
Yes. Yeah.
drawing yet more attention to it.
Yeah.
I
Would you
try
draw
and
an outline around that? I noticed there's a little tiny spot to the right. Would you draw an outline, or would that be too small? Would it make it almost no, almost?
no, sometimes
You,
it add a
no,
different color.
not there. No, it's just down underneath your hand. Underneath your hand, to the right. No, no, no. Over there. That one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He would like
Because it's so off on its own.
he would have like a little crown, that guy, because
Yeah.
he's off on his own against the flow. And so what I'm going to do now is just add between the leaves and the sprigs here, just with a little bit of darker bit of the blue. And it's worth noting here that when you draw in ink, it's very different to when you sort of paint in watercolor, in that ink will build up over lines. If you draw with the same color over a line twice, it gets darker, whereas watercolor it will get to its color and it will stay that color. Whereas ink, you can draw with a really light color and keep drawing over, and it'll almost get to black. So sometimes I go through these leaves and I just darken maybe the bits that are towards the stem where they're kind of opening up. And it just helps to kind of put those into shadow and gives them a little bit of depth. And then sometimes I just color in between the leaves as well with a darker color, just to give them like a little bit of lift and define the edges. Right, okay. So because we haven't used tea, and I'm aware of the fact that if I do a workshop and don't use tea, I may be shot. I'm going to brew up some tea. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very weak tea and move out here so you can see. So really, really light ochre color, and I'm going to work over the left-hand side of this piece here. Can we see that? Okay. There we go. I'm just going to introduce, which is going to give us a nice kind of, as it builds up and gets darker. So if you kind of like scoosh your tea and squeeze it around as you're painting, you'll start to get sort of stronger color as you're moving. And because you're painting over this blue, which is not water fast, you're going to start pulling some of those colors around as well. So you get this nice interplay between greens and blues and this almost vanilla sort of really, really subtle colored tea, which is going to get stronger by the second as we're painting with it, until you end up with a sort of a dark, round, sort of muddier color.
Now, Jennifer asked a while ago, and I've not asked the question because I've been thinking how to address it. So she said, "I'm not a great drawer. Is there a photograph to copy beforehand?" And I would imagine that's maybe to do with the hummingbird and
yes.
the outline. So the difficulty is that there's quite a lot of randomness in what you do as well. But I guess you do need the outline of the hummingbird, I guess.
Yes, you do, if you want to include the hummingbird. But I mean, if you take away the head of the hummingbird in this piece, for example, you're left with a fairly abstract piece, and it's about textures and making marks and kind of, there's a lot of things going on there that don't really even suggest a hummingbird. Like the parts of its body aren't really there. They're just quick marks with kind of graphite and
Yeah.
little that might appear. So maybe you could trace off and get yourself an area of the head of the bird somewhere on the page, and we could work around that. But I kind of like to focus on the sort of playfulness of the materials rather than how accurate the drawing is, because I think the key to this is really seeing what materials will kind of do for you, and then apply that to the way that you work normally as well, and just see how that kind of affects things. But it's having that playfulness and trying not to get people too worried about sort of drawing ability, because it's not the essential bit, I think, of what we're doing. You know, it's kind of it's kind of almost secondary to playing around with these materials and seeing what happens. Just adding some more teas and bits and pieces. I think what I'll do is, now I've just sort of blobbed some tea over the top of it, is I'll use a lifting technique again to lift some of these areas off. And it's all about subtle layers of color. If you see a finished one of my pieces, you'll notice that the colors become richer and darker as they go along, but that's achieved over layers and layers of painting. So the underlayers of the painting will be almost clear. You know, they'll be really, really light. And there's some lovely things happening here. So this is the wonderful thing about fountain penning. So you can see, you know, in this section where the boiling water and the tea brought in that yellow, but it's like a bleaching effect almost. And you'll see it here before I remove from this area here. When we take this off, we'll be left with almost negative spaces within that blue.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So what I would generally do is then work on that and then add more liquid over the top in certain areas. And then work that out with the nice textures that we've got, and then maybe draw another shard over this area, and then use that whole process of boiling water again over that area that's now more worked up to reveal these sort of like pieces over the top, and then continue that layering process, bringing things forward and kind of pushing them back. But what we can do now is we can make these negative spaces appear that they're over the darker spaces underneath, or even the other way around. You know, you sort of trick the eye so that they fall forwards or fall backwards. So by outlining some of these pieces, you can decide, you know, which way they kind of move in the layers. Add a bit more tea before I start drawing this, before I run out of time completely.
Yeah, I've only got a few minutes. And if any of you are interested in, because the last workshop that Carne and I did together, whether we hosted, was on a portrait. We took a female model and we did a portrait of her face. And there, what Carne was focused on was almost like the contour lines, and using that as well as the floral art within her hair and things like that. So it's fascinating to do, but some of the similar sort of techniques. So if you are interested in going and watching that, I'd highly recommend it. It's via our video channel, video catalogue. Jennifer's asked the name of the colour of the ink again. Jennifer, we're going to be putting this on our video library. You'll be able to watch it for free later on once we've got that up. So if you go to our video catalogue later and click it, you'll then be able to zoom backwards and forwards and find all the answers that you're looking for. And also, if you are hard of hearing, because we have a couple of people that are hard of hearing and they can't quite. YouTube does automatically subtitle things. They sometimes don't get the words totally right, but you can get the idea of things. So do give that a go. Switch on subtitles.
Okay, this isn't completely dry, but I'm just going to work over this area here. So again, with the same idea that we did before, I might just sort of a light brown color because we've introduced that, that light tea color there. So I tend to draw in a kind of light for light color over the top. Might just blur everywhere because it's a little bit.
Now, Pauline said she can't find the flaming option to book the workshop. It is on there, Pauline. So if you just refresh the page, so press the little curly arrow at the top, it'll reload the page, and it should be there on Carne's shop. It is definitely there. I'll put a link to Carne's shop on the chat now as well. There we go. Trina says, I'm very excited to keep playing with this technique and really appreciate Carne's class. Jennifer, thanks for the information. We'll give it a go. Hazel said, sadly, I don't think I can get the inks from Amazon for next week. But you could, if you've got any writing inks, Hazel, you don't necessarily have to get the specialist colours or whatever.
If you're looking for one to get off Amazon that will be ready, it's Waterman that are normally the one that you can get. That you
okay. Can yeah, Waterman's quite widespread.
But any writing ink, even a blue Parker ink will do.
Right, we're sort of near. I'll let you just kind of finish off while I finish the show. You can keep on tinkering if you want. Wow, how did you get on? I mean, I know some of you are just watching and you're going to be doing it later, but it's kind of a fairly straightforward process. You just have to go with it and kind of feel the patterns and just be inspired within the things, but it looks fantastic, doesn't it? And it's lovely to incorporate those shards of glass over the top. It's just a really fantastic effect. If you've got any words of thanks that you'd like me to pass to Carne, now's your chance to write that in the Q&A, and I'll read them to Carne in a minute. I've put a post up on our Facebook page as well, so if once you've done your picture, please share it on our Facebook page, facebook.com, search for Shopkeep Arty, and you'll see this relevant class there. So share your painting underneath and have a look at what everybody else has done. It's so much variety, and if you like what other people have done, don't be afraid to give them a compliment or two, and maybe give them a little like as well, and we'll feature them in the end of week Arty Roundup email that we do on a Saturday morning UK time. It's always a fascinating exercise, these Arty classes. It's fantastic. I'll go back to Carne in a minute and we'll see how he's getting on, because he's working on the detail and the layering now, which really starts to bring the depth to the picture. So Carne, a couple of comments. So Jennifer said, love his style, can't wait to try the techniques, have lots of inks and a big box of Tetley tea bags. So that's a good start. Hazel said, yes, Waterman, maybe not in Italy, but I'll give it a go. Really great class. Thank you, Carne. Kathy, thanks for a fabulous session. Jill, fascinating. Susie, your grip on the pen is unusual. Wonderful techniques. Beautiful work. Sandra, I love ink. Thanks, Carne. Very nice. Linda, lovely effects. Liked it very much. Thank you. Jane, thanks so much. Carne is my favourite artist. Julia, I've been watching on my iPad, so I'm not sure if this comes through. What a lovely class. I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you, Carne. So, yes, it did come through. Yale, said, thank you for an amazing class. This is awesome. I can't wait to give it a try. Trina, I'm very excited about his workshop as well. He's so inspiring and I always love playing and experimenting. Janice, really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to having a go at something different. Thank you. Diana, Khan's work is so inspiring and completely different from my usual loose but traditional style of painting. Thank you, Khan and John. Judy, very interesting technique, fascinating. I'm learning a lot. Thanks so much for a wonderful class. Norma, big thanks to you both for this really great technical class with Khan. Off to get a hot ticket. Well done. Then Bobby, this is really fun. I feel a big spending shopping event coming on because I don't have any of the ink tools. Thank you so much. Uh-oh, Bobby. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. And Wendy, thank you so much. So thank you guys for all your comments. It was really nice.
No problem.
So the end of another great Artie webinar. If you do want to join Khan and I for the full workshop event, don't forget to head over to our website and book it. I'm now heading to Florida to join watercolor fine artist Vlad Yeliseyev. It's always a fun one with Vlad. So if you've booked a ticket for that class, I'll see you very soon. If not, I hope you'll join me next Tuesday, where we're going to be painting an Easter bunny, getting in the Easter mood already. And to book a free place on that, you know where to go. So until next time, it's goodbye from me, but obviously goodbye and thank you so much to Khan.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, Khan. Thanks so much. And take care. I'm really looking forward to next week. Bye. I'll finish on your painting. Bye, everyone.